wanderer, a life adventurer, said he's a secret philosopher. He's a wandering wanderer.
Hello there once again, fellow peregrinos. Welcome to episode 25 of El Camino de Santiago Pilgrim's podcast, where we talk about planning, preparation and packing for walking the road to Santiago, as well as tips, tricks and hacks to make your journey along the way a lot more memorable and enjoyable. We want to put more bounce in your boots, more K's in your days, take the grim out of the pilgrimage. To that end, today we have an interview with a wonderful lady. We've got Dev Cuny, who is, now you may all want to take a deep breath and listen to this. It's a very, very skillful lady, multi-talented storyteller, activist, restorative justice practitioner, consultant, writer, TED Talk speaker as well. She's had her work featured in The Guardian, The New York Times, The Huffington Post. If you think that's impressive, wait till you hear this. At 7 years old, she was an Elvis Presley lookalike impersonator. Dev Cuny, thank you very much for joining the podcast.
Thank you. What a great intro.
How was my thank you very much? Was that okay?
It was very good. Definitely high rating coming from a 7-year-old Elvis impersonator. That's a big review.
Can we hear it done properly from yourself?
Thank you very much.
That was beautiful.
Thank you.
My boy. Okay. So you're also, on top of all that very, very impressive list of achievements you've got so far and your professional activities, you're also a Camino de Santiago Pilgrim. 2012 when you first walked it, and I'd like you to take us back to the exact time and place that you decided you were going to go and walk 500 miles across Spain.
Yeah, absolutely. I had actually first heard about the Camino when probably my freshman year of college. And it was always something that I'm like, one day that's a bucket list item. That's something I want to do. But, as time went on, it became, like a pipe dream or something that maybe I will get to do, but, didn't anticipate as quickly or earlier in life as I thought I actually got to. So it was 2012. I was coming out of a marriage. And I was in seminary, studying to become a minister. And I was just at this place in my life where I felt lost. I was in a lot of pain, a lot of transition. And a group of my friends one night, they just kept saying, what do you need to do to take care of yourself? What's something you can do that will help you move through this really tough time? And they kept asking me this. And I actually got quite annoyed, because I'm like, I didn't know what to say. And then suddenly at my height of frustration, I just yelled out, fine, I'll do the Camino de Santiago. And at that point they were like, okay. And so after saying that, I was like, I can't afford to go to the Camino when I'm in grad school. So the next day I contacted my advisor and she was like, I can hook you up with a grant if you agree to do a project about the Camino at school when you return. And so I remember popping in like The Way, the movie with Emilio Estevez, and watching it just to make sure I was absolutely sure I wanted to go. And then booking a ticket immediately the same day and just being like, I'm going to do it. And this would have been spring of 2012. And it was maybe 2 or 3 weeks after I decided to go that I was headed to the Camino.
So not much preparation then?
No, but luckily, since I had been thinking about it since I was in college, I'd already done a lot of research. But it was a very quick turnaround once I actually decided to go.
So how did you find your packing list before you went?
Yes. I definitely was going through internet, looking at every single chat room or anything that was Camino related and trying to just really figure out what it meant to make a carry a light load, which I think a lot of people would appreciate. That's not easy to do. And so it was really just like replicating what other people had done and really trying to figure out like how to keep it affordable, So I had friends who let me, borrow a backpack, and like some people had some knockoff stuff for camping equipment. And I just kind of assembled it very quickly, probably taking a couple trips to REI. But I managed to get everything into one gigantic pack and was headed off.
So you threw a load of things into the backpack. You've made your way over to Spain. Willy-nilly, spontaneously, it doesn't matter. The fact that the most important thing is that you've actually gone to do it. Where did you start, and why did you choose that starting point?
Yeah, actually, like a part of my story is even before I even got to the starting point. I had a friend whose husband was an EasyJet pilot, and they could get me on the plane and have discount flights for like $5 or $10 a flight. And so I flew over, and then immediately, flew into Barcelona, took a little time in Barcelona, then flew over to Rome, and then flew back into France. And at that point, I knew it was getting time for me to head down. Like, I wasn't even sure exactly where I was going to start on the Camino. I just knew I was going to end up there somehow. And so right before getting to the first stop, I took a detour to a monastery called Taizé in France, where I spent a week-long silent retreat there. And then from there it was like, oh, I've got to actually get to the Camino now. Like, it's time. And so I just remember it was just like this series of like, what train do I get to? And then someone would point me to the right train, and because I was always scared I was going to get lost and not even find the beginning. And through like a series of, people, strangers helping me not take a wrong turn, I finally ended up at Saint Jean. Can you remind me the whole name? I can't, man, it has been a while. Saint Jean.
It's Saint Jean Pied de Port. That's the place.
Yes.
SJPP, they call it. Yeah, SJPP. Saint Jean Pied de Port is where you eventually got to the long way round. And how did you find the first day on that climb up into the Pyrenees?
No, man, I consider my first day, I like to make fun of Americans or people from the United States, since I am one of them. But I would say it was the classic. I did the classic, like, must get there quickly to the first hostel as fast as I can, and just kind of book it through to make sure that I wouldn't be without a place to sleep that night. So my first day was very much an athletic adventure of trying to completely get to fulfill a mission versus actually enjoy the journey. But in the meantime, I just remember it being very beautiful and slightly overcast, and just like feeling like I was just in this dream come true, where, I had been dreaming about this for years. So to actually be doing it was just like exciting. And so a blend between needing to get to the hostel and also just being like a little bit in shock that it was starting. It was a great first day.
So it sounds like you were taking a little bit of time to move from your pre-Camino life to the present moment as a Camino de Santiago Pilgrim, and
yes,
actually slow down a little bit.
Yes, which is a big part of my trip, was the journey of learning what it means to slow down. It's very much a part of Camino.
Yeah, and actually just being in the moment, get to know yourself a little bit better. And like you said at the start, you went because you were in a lot of pain regarding to things in your personal life. And talking of pain there and then in the Camino, it sounds like you, like we said, kind of went spontaneously. Were you prepared with your equipment? Like, for example, your boots, with blisters and stuff like that. How were you faring on the first few days?
Yeah, that's a favorite topic. Blisters.
Cheesy feet. Yeah.
Yep. And I was like so many, and I definitely had feet issues in the first few days. I had a couple of different shoes I had brought with me.
You brought more than one pair?
And was wearing.
Wow.
Yeah, well, I brought what's funny, and I'll explain this, but like I had a shower sandals that were also like hiking sandals, and then I also had like these hiking boots. And I'd done all, as much research as I could in the short amount of time, but I really thought I'd made a good choice. And of course, in the first few days, my feet were covered in blisters.
Really?
And they were swelling. And I will never forget, just trying everything to try, I just saw a picture while thinking about this interview. I saw a picture of my hiking shoes with like a a maxi pad, a feminine hygiene product, in my shoe as one way to try to create more cushion to handle the blisters. And then I found another picture of just a gaping, like large blister that no one needs to see. But the thing that I remember where I actually met some of the people I was closest to in the Camino was my feet were so swollen and the blisters were so bad that I thought I was going to have to end the Camino in the first few days because I could barely even walk to get to the next town. And there was this family from South Africa who saw me in so much pain. And so they actually helped physically get me to the town. And then they proceeded to take out this like portable bucket and fill it with warm water. And they put my feet, kind of like, the idea of Jesus washing people's feet. Like this family actually took my shoes off, soaked my feet, and helped me try to just get back literally on my feet so that I could make a decision whether to keep going or not. And so the blisters was a huge part for me of like the first trip, because I was like, oh my gosh, I'm in good shape and I'm not even going to make it past the first week here. And that brought me into like, realizing that the shoes I had were not working. And so I remember buying another pair of hiking shoes and spending, more money than I would like to, thinking that would solve it. But then yet again, my feet still were killing me. And so it wasn't actually until I finally was just so fed up that I just put on my sandals for showering without socks, just the sandals, that all of a sudden my feet stopped having blisters. They weren't swollen, and I walked completely fine the rest of the way.
So you walked the rest of the way in sandals?
Yep. In sandals, Keen sandals. And if I had known that I could have just spent $30 on shoes versus the hundreds that I did, I would have just only brought that one pair. But you just don't know what's going to work sometimes. So that's what worked for me.
And that was without socks as well, I'm assuming.
Yep.
So your feet were getting some air. They were finally getting a chance to heal. Well, that is an unorthodox approach, I have to say.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I mean, it was like, I did not expect that to work, but I think that fact that the sandals gave my feet space to swell.
Yeah.
And just to lose, it was amazing how comfortable the rest of the trip was once I discovered that.
Yeah. I mean, a friend of mine who walked the Camino, he did a large amount of it in sandals as well, actually, after I think we were in the third week, we were in a place called Astorga, which I don't know if you remember, it's kind of in the last few hundred, I think, something like last 150 maybe. And a Danish guy, and his toes were black and blue with blisters. I mean, I don't want to put people off from doing the Camino, but the whole point of this podcast is to talk about the bumps and bruises and blisters that you get along the way and try to advise people about how they might deal with it. So on previous podcasts, we've heard about putting Vaseline on your feet, before you walk, during the day. And if all else fails, fellow peregrinos, just get a pair of sandals, stick your feet in them and get going.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely wouldn't say that's my number one advice.
Yeah.
To start with the sandals, but if all else fails, that might actually be a great solution. So I wouldn't knock it till you try it.
And I'm curious, this South African family, they were pilgrims as well, I assume?
Yes. And they were, oh man, I'm definitely going to introduce them to you. They'll be excited about your podcast. But they're from South Africa. Like they came together to do this as a trip. So it was like, two daughters, a mom and dad, and then an aunt. And so they did their very first Camino with me, like we met up and we're still all in touch on Facebook and everything. But they loved it as a family that they have sensed. I have no idea how many more times they have actually walked the Camino. They were meeting as a family yearly for a period of time to walk the Camino. They were that in love with it. So it was pretty cool.
And that's a lovely story as well, because that's something you find commonly along the Camino. When you need people, they seem to just magic out of somewhere. And that is, the Camino magic at work right there. And you hear so many stories like that. I mean, there was a lady called Rachel Smith a couple of episodes ago, and she said she knocked on someone's door and said, can we please sleep in your garage because we can't go any further. And then this family decided to drive them on to the next alberg, for free. And it's stories like that really bring the Camino to life and embody the Camino and the people and the locals and the pilgrims. And I love to hear stories like that. And I'm sure that you saw some of that yourself along the way as well.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, there is nothing like the relationships you build on the Camino. And I remember, people are telling me or me reading that, you can gain families on the road, like these, the families that like you said, sometimes you need people, or that, having the community to walk with, is really helpful just, to go through that whole journey. And it was true. I felt like I had sisters and brothers and fathers and grandparents that I would meet along the way. And a part of my journey when I decided to go was, it was important for me to go solo, for me to not go with anyone, at that moment, at that time in my life. And so I knew I'm a very people oriented person. So I knew I would meet people along the way. But part of my work was to be able to meet people, but also to let them go and keep walking alone until the next group of people I met. And so with that, it was both hard because I loved everyone I was meeting. And so as a people person, I was like, this is great. These stories are amazing. I mean, the reason people come to the Camino is just so powerful often. Like why would anyone choose to do this? And it's usually there's some kind of unique story. But then also for me, the saying goodbye was a part of the Camino, because it was just a reminder again and again that this was a spiritual journey for me and I had to do it alone and find myself. So it was just this beautiful blend between the two. But, just some of the stories I met, like one person, he was probably late 70s, early 80s, and he was faster than everyone. He was just like booking it. And you could tell he was in great shape. And running circles around younger people who saw themselves as athletes. And I remember like stopping at a hostel with him and just like him finally sharing a little bit about why he was there. And it was just the week before he went on the Camino, his wife had died. And so he didn't know what to do. So he just was like, I'm just going to walk. And so it was just amazing to feel his energy, but also to witness his grief and how he was processing it by, like, one of my favorite phrases are it's solved by walking. And this idea
So
that
true.
it's like through the act of walking, there's so much that can happen to us spiritually, emotionally, however best defines it for you. And he was a great example of someone who utilized walking to really actually get in touch with probably the rawest part of life.
It's great medicine. I think there's a guy that's regarded as the father of Western medicine, Hippocrates. He was said to have said 2,000 odd years ago that walking is life's best medicine. And studies have proven that just 11 minutes of walking per day supposedly can put 2 years on your life. And
oh my gosh,
yeah, I know, it's incredible. And how this guy was processing his grief, it just shows how you can take a positive out of a negative, and why I think pilgrims are such inspirational people as well.
Yes,
Most
absolutely
definitely.
agree with that.
And part of that connecting with people and the camaraderie that you have with your fellow pilgrims often happens, I find, not only on the road, but when you stop in the hostels, the albergues along the way. I'm intrigued how you found the whole albergue experience, and if you stayed in them, how did you find it? Kind of sleeping, the routine, the being outside of your comfort zone, where everyone's used to their comfy bed at home, and all of a sudden you're thrown into sometimes like a barrack style hall with 100 bunk beds. How was it for you?
Yeah, I mean, it was a mix. I feel like I had a lot of different experiences with them, both positive and, of course, the encounter of bed bugs. Yes,
you
and
encountered
challenging.
bed bugs.
I did, and I felt like with the kind of the groups that we were in, like the further along the path, it was like those who had been impacted by bed bugs were in one area, and those not
Wow.
were in another. It was almost like
Never seen anything like that.
Yeah, it was a really interesting. I thought I'd been spared until the very end, and then I had some bed bugs, and it is what it is. I had read about it So I wasn't that surprised. But
What time of the year
you
did you
know
walk the Camino, Dev?
what time of
What
day
time
or
of the
time of
year,
year?
sorry?
It would have been the beginning of summer,
Hmm.
like our yeah, and so it was fine. It was a major process getting back into the country because the person who was picking me up was scared I was going to bring bed bugs home, and so I had a whole process of re-entrance into the United States and just making sure I was responsible. But otherwise, like when I think of the hostels, I because I would intentionally try to walk alone some of each day, that it was exciting to know that at the end of the day there would always be companionship,
Yeah.
and part of the hostel is like before it is getting the pilgrim's meal and gathering together to what I call breaking bread and really just be able to catch up on the day, get to know people a little bit more. And as a person who is has leans extroverted in that way, like being at the hostel was a time just to kind of get my social needs met.
Did you
I'm
did
also
you
a very
bring out a
private
bit of
person.
Elvis at
Oh,
all during those
I
nights?
don't. I can't recall. I think I would have remembered, but if I could redo it, which maybe I will, I'll consider
One
that.
thing you
It's
do
it's
differently,
smart.
right?
Yeah, exactly. There you go. Yeah, but it's like as a private person, it was in terms of just my own personal space where I sleep. It's an adjustment to feel like you're surrounded by people that often, or are in a space where I would probably want the most privacy. And sleeping wasn't always easy, but then when you've walked all day, that can also create good sleep. It
Yeah.
just depends. And I would suggest if you can, if you have space to bring a sleeping mask or earplugs or whatever, that might be helpful. But it just kind of was part of the experience. Like I kind of feel like the hard times were just as interesting as the good times because it's the full experience.
Exactly. Yeah. And it makes you appreciate your
And
big
so,
bed when you go home, for sure.
oh my gosh, yes. And a couple like when thinking about my experience with hostels, by the end, I think the last like 100 miles, or I don't remember what it was. There was like the last 200 kilometers, something like that. There was a point where we were like, okay, now we're getting into the most hectic part of the Camino. And, where it was harder to get hostels at the time, or we were scared that it would be harder to get beds. And so there was a group of us, we had gotten so used. I mean, gosh, just how much I just slowed down and became present on the Camino. By the time we got to the last part, we were just like, we don't even need to be in a hostel. We don't need a bed. And we started actually flipping when we walked and when we rested. And so the last few nights, a group of us actually would find places in a field and sleep outside. And then we didn't have to worry about, having to be somewhere on time. It took away the stress of having to get there before the beds were taken up. And a few times we would all like be like, you get the cheese, you get the bread, you get the meat. And we would get it along the way and then gather and then like kind of do a picnic and just be outside. And was that any better sleep? No. But the experience of going from at the beginning where I am like rushing to try to get a spot and feeling like the deprivation to getting to a point towards the end where I could just let go because I was going to sleep one way or the other. It was just this really beautiful experience. And then to suddenly have a whole community who was willing to not have a bed for a few nights to instead be in nature. It was an incredible way to end the Camino.
It's a nice way to build up those relationships with your fellow pilgrims, and sounds like you had something like a mobile commune going on there.
Yes, yes, I would say that's a great way to describe it. It was sweet, really sweet.
Yeah, and you've definitely got the full Camino experience if you've slept under the stars. And I think that's one of the great things. I mean, if you'd have told yourself, I'm asking you this question now, if you'd have told yourself before you did the Camino that that's what you'd end up doing and being quite okay with it, would you have believed someone? Would you have believed it?
Yeah, I don't know. I think I would have just been like, you have to see it to believe it in a way, but I would have been like, really, is this what this is going to be like? But I honestly was open for pretty much anything. I was open for things to be hard, and I was pleasantly surprised by how even the harder stuff still had so much joy connected to it. So of course I had this dream of what the Camino would be like. And then to compare that dream to what actually happened, I feel like the reality definitely won out. And huge fan, if you can't tell yet, huge fan of walking the Camino.
Yeah, I can feel your energy coming through the microphone. And in terms of you throwing together your packing list and your kit list, and you borrowing backpacks and throwing away shoes and all that kind of thing, out of everything that you took with you, is there one thing you couldn't have done without?
Oh man, I think just it's very basic and probably a bit of a boring answer, but it's just my 2 shirts. Like I got like quick dry shirts, and I was just constantly switching off which one I'm cleaning and which one I'm wearing. But just getting it down pat to just how basic clothes was, that I was really just like between 2 shirts and like, these pants that were both pants and shorts. And, but it was the quick drying that seemed to be an important thing. And so just that, like having that down to a science and realizing I could not have felt successful on the Camino or felt good without having those quick dry shirts.
It sounds like you definitely did your research if you had quick dry shirts
Yes.
and only a few of them as well.
Yep.
And you got that together pretty quickly. So that's very impressive as well. And is there one thing you took with you that you never used that you'd say to your other fellow pilgrims not to take with them? They won't need it?
Yeah, I mean, it's stuff that someone else might use, but like I didn't like there were a lot of like nifty little camping gear things that, like a compass or, I'm trying to think, like, I think I had like a jacket I never actually used. They're like things you would think you would use that I just ended up not using. And then, and at first it was really hard to let go of them. But as the journey went on and there were places to kind of give them away, it was it feels great when you start actually giving away your stuff and lightening the load. But
liberating.
Liberating. And then laughing, because one of my regrets with packing is for the first part of the trip, I brought my laptop, before I got to the Camino, and I thought I was going to ship it. I still to this day do not know what my thinking was, but I missed the opportunity to ship my laptop back before I started the Camino, and just was like, I'll start it. So I ended up walking across Spain with a laptop in my backpack. And that is not what I would advise. It was funny. I remember feeling a little bit embarrassed when I'd pull it out. I'm like, I'm sorry. I really am able to disconnect from my electronics. But having that was one, the unnecessary weight. Definitely do not need to have that. And two, it also was just a reminder of actually how hard it is to disconnect from our regular lives. That I wouldn't even have planned out well enough how to make sure the laptop didn't come with me. And so in some ways it served as this beautiful symbol to remind myself that I'm on the Camino for the opposite reason that I have this laptop most of the time, and which is to be back in a sense of presence, to know that life will go on whether I am connected to the internet or not, and that real true connections happen when you are in person with people.
And disconnected in the digital sense.
Yes.
I mean,
yes.
For me, when I look back on my Camino experiences and the people I met and how I felt like it was some kind of golden age where everyone was just so kind to each other, so accepting. Yes. The love was unconditional. The Camino and life as a pilgrim is a great leveler. It doesn't matter whether you've come from a job where you're earning $100,000 a year or whether you're earning $10,000 a year, whatever it could be. The minute you both are walking on that Camino, you share the same goal. You've got a massive thing in common, and that breaks down societal barriers that ordinarily exist. And for me, it's like I wish the whole world, the whole planet could be like one big Camino. And I've always thought, if there was some kind of major conflict on the globe, the first place I would go to feel safe would be the Camino, because that's where you're going to find the nicest people and your kindred spirits and kindness and random acts of kindness and just this superior civilization. And that's how I always saw the Camino, where the biggest problems were just probably blisters, bad toenails and snoring, and that was it really. That's, you know, the biggest thing you've got to deal with. So
Yeah.
that's the way I always look at the Camino and think of it. And getting back to your thing about the compass, you definitely wouldn't need a compass, because obviously you're always due west, and you just follow those yellow arrows. And yeah, I mean the laptop, it's interesting because one of my previous guests said she wanted to take her laptop with her because she needs to work, which is completely understandable. Any Camino is better than no Camino. But you said, it was a beautiful symbol, a reminder to you that of the reason that you were there.
Yes,
Like
absolutely.
a deterrent in a way. So, okay. Now, we've talked a little bit about your kit list. I want to dive into your Camino experience in general. What was your favorite town, city, or village along the Camino, and why?
Yeah, that's the thing. I was trying to think about if there was.
It's like saying,
one
what's your
stuck
favorite
out.
Elvis song? I know it's impossible to answer that, but
It really is. And I was trying to think about this, and I think, this is maybe it's because this is the easiest memory, but it was the first night like that I met, just gathered around the tables. I met people that I would see throughout the rest of my Camino. So it kind of set the tone of just having that first dinner of like, oh, these are my people. Whether we walk together for just one day or we see each other once every other week or however long, like these are the people that I am now connected to in a particular way. And so, but there's so many, and I'll be honest, I don't remember all the names now. Like what I do remember is all the good food and, all the different stopping points of trying every cuisine possible, that was there. But yeah, like, I think in general, it was just an overall feeling of even wondering with each night, which of the people from that first hostel will I see that day? And so, so I guess that's how that would be my favorite.
So you liked it all so much that it's impossible for you to pick out one specific town, city, or village. Or what about an albergue? Is there an albergue that you remember where maybe the hospitalero or hospitalera was particularly nice? You met a nice group of people. You had one specific night where you've got a nice story to tell. Is there an albergue that stands out for you that you would say to those that are going to go, they should go to?
Yeah, the problem is I don't remember the name. Like that's the unfortunate part, but there is one along the way, so I'm not going to be useful in that way.
I can do my detective work and find out what it is. So
okay.
If you can remember more or less where it is or the town or anything like that, then
yeah. Well, I remember I had said at the beginning that I had spent a week at Taizé, a monastery,
yeah.
And so Taizé music is played at different places on the Camino when I walked it. So there was an albergue that it was like they provided, I remember like a free lentil soup meal, and then took us in and we sang some Taizé music as part of the being a part of it. And so it was just this really small, hostel, not in the middle of any particular city. And I met up with the South African family there, and we were able to, again, like eat really, really good food. And I remember it sticking out because I was like, I didn't pay for the soup. And then getting to listen to this music and sing. And as a person who identifies as a Christian, like having the Taizé music was a very special time just to be able to share that with other people, regardless of, spiritual identity. Does that sound familiar to you at all?
The Taizé music,
yes.
It doesn't. I mean, I have to become clean here. I don't know what Taizé music is. So, but for anyone that's listening and that sounds like their kind of thing, then I'm sure that they can research it. Yeah, I mean, it's all about those special nights and moments that stick in your memory and the feeling that it gave you on that night. And it sounds amazing that you got to reunite with the South African family as well.
Yes, definitely. And yes, and Taizé is, if there are people out there who will probably know it and be like, oh yay, Taizé on the Camino. And if you don't know it, that is okay. You probably sang Taizé on the path without even knowing it was Taizé.
Right. Okay. Well, I'll do my detective work and I'll put a few places on our Camino de Santiago Pilgrims podcast Facebook page, so the listeners can go on there
Awesome.
and have a little look of where they can find that if they want to. And you mentioned many times in the interview so far, your faith plays a large part in your life. And how did the Camino, did it strengthen your faith? Did it change your understanding of anything? Did it make you think about it in a different way? Did it deepen it? How did faith play into your Camino?
Yeah, I mean, it was significant. Like, part of my faith tradition is the belief of pilgrimage, of the holy act of going through a period of time of deep reflection, trying to, and what I kind of imagine, stripping away some of the unnecessary in order to come closer and closer in touch with the divine, with God. And, knowing that the Camino is like, this over 1,200-year pilgrimage path that was, Catholic in its roots, like that was really appealing for me, because I was like, I kept thinking about who has stepped on this path before me, all of these people who have been doing the same thing. And it felt like walking on holy ground because
sacred, isn't it?
Because of because it's the intentions that were put on this path. Yeah. And I feel like I could feel it along the way. And, and so for me, like, again, reflecting on coming in, like so wound up, like I talk about like needing to get to that hostel first before everybody, and again, it's like that whole wondering or understanding about productivity versus just presence, and so being on the Camino and having to watch myself, what I would almost say I was in withdrawal from busyness, the first part of the trip. And, so first it was uncomfortable to slow down, but then to move into the path where, like, I think it was called the plains, like just this whole period of time where I was like walking alone in these beautiful plains, like in Spain. And then just suddenly being like, feeling the sense of the enormity of God that was around and being like, this is probably the thinnest veil, as I would say, between me and God, and feeling that close on it. And all I was doing was eating, sleeping, moving my body, in sharing space with other people. And I could not have felt more in touch with my faith than through those actions. And so, and one of the most beautiful like moments, which was deeply spiritual for me, was, and you could probably add the language in for me, but the Great Cross, where we put stuff.
The Cruz de Ferro.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for me, I had carried my wedding ring with me to walk across, not knowing if I would be able to let it go at the cross. But by the time I got there, where it's placed on the journey, it's so, the timing was perfect. And I just remember looking down and seeing all the pictures of loved ones, all the different mementos or symbols that people had brought with them along the trail. And then thinking about all of the stories of pain that I heard from other pilgrims. Like, I just knew it was absolutely the right thing for me to put my ring at the cross. And so that, like, as a person who identifies as a Christian, there is just something that there are no words to explain that communication, that prayer, that act of praying, and letting go and surrendering that happened at that cross on the Camino. So I can talk about this forever, but it is definitely one of the great pilgrims of my life. It made me feel closer to God in the sense that it was the great reminder that God never disappears. It's just sometimes I'm not looking, and if I just open my eyes or if I just sit still, I realize that I never was alone.
And that moment of the cross, was that a turning point for you? You never look back?
Yeah, I mean, I knew that was marking what I always say. There's moments of like, you always remember what life was like before.
Yeah.
And what it's like after, because it's never the same. And it was just like, okay, like I did this path because I was in pain and I'm going through transition. This is acknowledging this major point in my life, But by me relinquishing and putting my ring down was saying, now I am ready for the next chapter, which is to start moving through it and seeing what else God has in store for me. So yes, very much a turning of the page.
The end of the end of the old and the beginning of the new.
Yes, exactly.
And I mean, I've listened to your TED talk, and it's very, very powerful. And you can share as much of that TED talk here now as much as you want to. You can summarize it or go into depth about it. Did the Camino give you any insights as to your whole life experience as well? Was there anything that came to you on the Camino? Did it help you with that as well, with that stuff that you talked about on the TED talk? If you'd like to share a little bit of that.
Yeah. And, I did a TED talk that was mainly talking about why it is absolutely essential that people are accepted for exactly who they are in order to thrive. And my background is, being raised in a very conservative Christian family. I came out as a queer person, as an LGBTQ person, and being in the church that I was at, the church rejected me. My family rejected me and tried to get me to become straight. And so it was a very, very difficult journey in my faith, where I had always believed in God, always passionately been committed to my faith. And then to be told that I was not a child of God, and then to be asked to leave, from religious communities because of who I am, was absolutely painful. And so the Camino, it's so interesting to think about, like, going from the Camino to then ending up doing this TED Talk. And it's absolutely all connected, because I was in seminary when I chose to do the Camino. And, one of the reasons I went to seminary was to study the Bible and to deconstruct and make sense of whether there was a place at God's table for a person like me. And so, while the Camino was about going through the divorce on the surface, the Camino was a statement of my entire journey that I'd had with God. And that includes, like, one of the things I love about the Camino is all the different terrains that you walk on, and isn't that the great metaphor for our life, of all the different ways that we have to struggle and feel pain in our bodies, depending on the unevenness of the ground, the people we encounter who give us insight into our lives, not always getting to find the cushy bed to sleep in and actually to have many sleepless nights. I mean, that is the great spiritual journey, period. And so why I find the Camino important to my own healing around being an LGBT person who is a Christian, and also reconciling with my parents who now fully accept me, was having to get to the basics of what faith is. And it's easy to be like, faith is if you never get a divorce, then you're a good Christian. If you never drink too much, then you're a good Christian. If you're never whatever. And walking on the Camino, when, you might start with all of these dreams, and then you end up sleeping outside in the field, eating meat and cheese and
living the
simply living the dream. Suddenly all of these other layers of the ifs and shoulds don't matter so much. So if I were to connect the two, the Camino just was like, I can't speak on behalf of God, but if I could, like, do a little bubble, like, convo of what God would be saying in this moment, it would be like, see, it never was that hard. It was always this simple. And so the Camino has helped strengthen me as a person of faith, which has led me to being able to do the TED Talk, which was to talk about how I too, just like every person I met on the Camino, all of us have always had a place at God's table, and each and every one of us really is fully loved and belongs.
And you also mentioned in that TED Talk about the importance of acceptance. And I think that's where the Camino is really beautiful, because, like we said before, it's such a great leveler, and everyone just accepts each other for what they are on the Camino. When you meet your fellow pilgrims, there's there's no airs and graces. There's no pretense anymore, because there's no reason to pretend. You just all share that same goal. And I mean, I remember meeting a young girl, and she had been, I guess, outcast by her family because she had drug and alcohol problems. And I think for her, the Camino was part of her healing as well. And she said to me that's why she was beginning to feel so much better on the Camino, because she could tell people this stuff and people wouldn't judge her. People would actually try to help instead of making her feel like an outcast, a shame on the family. And I think that's why the Camino is a great place for many people to find solace. And I'm really glad that you found solace on the Camino in that way, and that you were able to close a painful chapter of your own life with regards to your marriage by leaving that ring at Cruz de Ferro. And it's actually a really, really nice story to hear. And I'm sure many people can identify with that, and many people that are going to walk the Camino for similar reasons. You might be inspiring them to do the same thing. And so thank you so much for sharing that story as well, Dev. You mentioned earlier on, going to circle back to the stuff we've talked about with your TED Talk and your faith just before we finish. But you mentioned earlier on quite a few times, Dev, food.
Yes.
So tell the people some food they need to try while they're on the road.
Well, I mean, I would say, like, I could not have had more tortilla if you had stuffed it in my my body. It's like the egg dish that you can get. It was one I knew how to say it, tortilla, and I knew I would get. But like, I was obsessed with. I remember there was a period like each region had its own cuisine, and I have a memory of raspberries being a big part of one area towards the end, Galicia or something like that. I can't. My apologies for not knowing the names right off. Yes. Paella, like I ate a bunch of paella on the road. There was this, I love like beans and rice combos. And there was this ham beans, like soup that I would get at the beginning of a pilgrim's meal that I would just look out for, and be so excited about. But like, it was, tons of tortilla and cafe con leche. I mean, I lived off of those. But yeah, and I will say that my favorite part of the food was actually when I was still on the France side briefly. But, Spain has its own exciting cuisine. And I took, I'll have to show it to you later, but I took pictures of food along the whole path.
Right.
So that I would always remember these great meals. So.
Well, send me a few photos and I'll stick them on, and people can just look out for it on the way. They don't even need to know the name of it. They just show the person in the restaurant the picture. I'll have that, please. Have you still got any of that, please? So yours was, that's come up quite a lot, is the tortilla patata. And the paella, of course, you've got to try paella when you're in Spain. And I think the soup you're referring to is called caldo gallego, which is that lovely soup they serve you as part of the pilgrim menu before you have your main dish. Just before we circle back to your professional activities and your TED Talk and the subject of that, a couple of quick fire questions. What was the hardest part of the Camino for you?
Honestly, leaving it. To feel again that sense of rawness, of oneness with like the people around you, with nature, with God. It took a whole process on the Camino to get there. It didn't happen week one. Yeah. It happened, towards the end. And so to realize that I had to take this true pilgrimage experience and try to go back into life and integrate it, that was hard. Yeah. I actually was like, how could I live on the Camino for the rest of my life? And like really trying to think about that. So it was just like understanding that this was a very special moment and that I would forever have the Camino as a part of me, but the leaving it and having to accept that life is more complicated on the day to day was just, it came with its own sadness, but then also always gratitude for getting to do this at all, which was such an opportunity.
Any Camino resolutions? You know, like people make resolutions for New Year's, every New Year. You know, I found I like to make a Camino resolution when I'm coming, like that oneness, that deliberateness of everything you do on the road is so carefully thought out and carried out, because one false move could see you losing that all important t-shirt because you've only got two, or losing something in the old word because there's 100 people around and you've misplaced your toothbrush, or the deliberateness of stuff I find is and the oneness of you being present in everything you do. Whereas when I'm at home, it's like, oh, I'll just check Instagram, I'll just check my phone while I'm doing this, and that's what I find quite tiring when you come off the Camino, that you go back to that. So my resolution this time was that I was going to get a dumb phone instead of a smartphone. So all this tendency to just check stuff is going to be abolished from my life. And when I'm finished working for the day, my laptop goes upstairs, out the way, and out of sight and out of mind. I wonder if you had any similar resolutions that you thought, this is the new me, this is what I'm going to do from now on.
Mine was, and I love thinking about like different ways to look at that. And for me, it was a pretty basic, I was going to walk more. And, again, going back, in my faith, I'm a big fan of like what they call the labyrinth. And a labyrinth is, a maze that you can walk. And then at the center of the labyrinth is what you call the heart. And so at the start of a labyrinth, I will say a prayer, and then I will pray that prayer, have that intention. And when I get to the heart, it's kind of like a space for me just to be with God in prayer around that. And so after walking so much, I was like, how could I not continue walking as a part of my spiritual practice? And so ever since coming from the Camino, I mean, I was walking 6 or 7 miles a day after the Camino, and I have not sustained that. But I will still to this day think, if I can walk, can I make more time to walk to this and then take that time to pray versus like drive? And so I have been walking, and this is 2012, so it's stayed with me. I have definitely increased the amount of time that I walk and pray since the Camino, and hope to do that for the rest of my life, because it is helping me keep that part of the Camino with me everywhere I go.
And what would you say for you was the best part of the Camino?
Oh my gosh.
On top of all the other things we've talked about, is there one thing you could pick out?
I mean, it really does come down to what you were talking about. There is an openness that happens. Like, I liken it to, sometimes when you have your first week at college and you don't know anyone, so then everyone's more open in the freshman class to getting to meet people, because everyone needs to meet people. And I see the Camino as all of us were somewhere in our life that said, this is what I want to do. Out of anything we could have chosen to do, we were going to walk across Spain. And so that the amount of healing I saw, people making sense. I walked with sisters who were working through their issues. Like, I call them the Australian sisters, and I got to be present as they were talking more openly and more intimately, seeing people like decide on a whole new career paths, having to leave unhealthy relationships, realizing they are, ready for marriage. Everyone was processing something and was open to sharing more about themselves. And so, like you talk about, it's like we were able to counsel each other when asked, and just to be there as a listening ear. There's something about being able to be in a space where you are outside your normal context, where you can be more open and still be very seen. So that by far is something I will always carry with the Camino, is the potential of healing and love that can happen when you put people together on a shared experience with this automatic sense of openness.
And witnessing that evolution from start to end.
Absolutely. It is magical.
That's a lovely way to put it. Really nice way to put it. And just before finishing, Dev, if you'd like to tell the listeners where they can keep up with you online.
Yes. Yeah. I have a website, and it's devcuny.com, and that's spelled DEVCUNY.com. And then, of course, I'm also on Facebook and Instagram under Dev Cuny, DEVCUNY. Yeah, and from there you can find all the other things that I'm doing professionally and in my spare time.
Okay, I'll also put a link to all of those pages on our Camino de Santiago Pilgrims podcast Facebook page, so everyone can go on there and have a look as well. And we normally finish the podcast interviews by me saying "Buen camino, fellow peregrina," but I feel that it wouldn't be right without doing some kind of Elvis themed finish to this. So would you like to say the immortal famous words?
Elvis has left the building.
Wanderer, a life adventurer, said he's a secret philosopher. He's a wandering wanderer,